Kia ora and welcome to the fourth session of our short course looking at assessment capability. In the previous videos, we have inquired into your beliefs and goals for being assessment capable in your school, looked at relevant pedagogies and approaches you need to have in place to enact your beliefs, and inquired into your systems, routines and practices that assist you in developing teacher practice so that everyone in your school aligns with your beliefs and approach on assessment capability. This fourth video will introduce you to a SMART tool method for monitoring and evaluating your efforts. The research from the Te Kotahitanga project identified that when schools created a whānau-like environment for their students and created strong learning relationships, they were able to interact in ways that promoted learning and use effective teaching strategies. This resulted in accelerated achievement for Māori and marginalised students. The research also found that effective monitoring of these different factors was critical to sustain the gains being made by the Māori and marginalised students. Bishop, O'Sullivan and Berryman developed a SMART tool monitoring method to support schools to monitor their impact, spread successful practice, and sustain the gains made by all. This tool can be used by leaders at a school-wide level and by teachers to monitor their impact on their students. This tool is called GPILSIO and is an acronym, standing for G, establishing goals and a vision for improving targeted student participation and achievement. P, developing a pedagogy or practice to depth in order to change core educational practices. I, developing new institutions and organisational structures to support the new pedagogies and practices. L, developing leadership that is proactive, responsive and distributed. S, spreading the reform. E, using evidence to engage in individual and collaborative problem solving and decision making and monitor progress. O, create opportunities for all involved to take ownership of the reform so that practice is sustained. It is critical that you continually monitor your efforts and support your teachers in monitoring their efforts. Without continual monitoring, you'll not be able to sustain the practices you have in place to support everyone in your school in meeting your beliefs about being assessment capable. Let's have a look at each of these elements further and how you can use this model in the context of assessment capability. Goals. When setting goals, they must be specific, measurable, and focused on improving student achievement and outcomes. The focus of your goals must be on reducing disparity, i.e. focusing on specific students. Targeted student achievement must be identified, because non-specific education for all approaches simply maintain the status quo. Some students may achieve, but disparity will remain. When considering your beliefs and goals for assessment capability, what specific improvements in student achievement are you wanting to make? How will your goals specifically accelerate achievement for marginalised students? And is your goal challenging enough? P, pedagogy and practices. The next step is to identify pedagogies and practices that will need to be implemented in order to achieve your goal. When implementing these, it is crucial that teachers develop an in-depth understanding of the principles of these pedagogies. For change to be sustainable, it is not enough to simply give teachers new instructional strategies. They need a deep understanding so they can reflect on and apply their understanding in challenging and changing contexts. When deciding on the pedagogies you want teachers to implement to meet your goal, we suggest considering some of the pedagogies we discussed in video 2, such as effective feedback and co-constructing what success looks like with students. What will these pedagogies look like, sound like and feel like? How will they differ from current assessment for learning interactions? Also consider, what pedagogies will the leaders in your school use when supporting teachers to deepen their understanding of the pedagogical principles? I is for institutions and systems. Fullen, in 2001, stated that the main reason that change fails to occur in the first place on any scale, and does not get sustained when it does, is that the infrastructure is weak, unhelpful, or working at cross purposes. This part of the tool asks you to identify the structures and institutions that need to be in place so the pedagogies you have chosen are implemented successfully and the practices sustained. These structures need to be flexible and responsive so they can respond to the needs of your teachers and students. What needs to be added or modified in your current systems and routines that support teacher practice and assessment for learning? In particular, providing feedback and coaching for teachers and facilitating professional collegial discussions. Is this manageable and sustainable? Leadership. A fundamental role of a school leader is to reduce educational disparities through improving student outcomes. This part of the tool invites you to look at who needs to take responsibility for leading students' learning in response to your goal and monitor the impact of the pedagogies identified. Consider, what do your leaders need to know and do in order to support teachers in using the pedagogical practices identified to improve their assessment capability in order to raise achievement and reduce disparities? What role will your leaders need to play in upholding and prioritising your systems and institutions? How they support others to be evaluative and respond with action to support teachers to improve practice or leaders to improve the system. Spread. Spreading the pedagogies and practices across your school and beyond is crucial in sustaining the positive impacts you will make on your targeted students. This part of the tool asks you to identify the means of spreading practice to other teachers and leaders. This is more than just spreading classroom strategies, materials, and activities. It also needs to include spreading the underlying belief and principles of your identified pedagogies and practices. How might the fundamental assessment capability principles influence and draw in other teachers within your school and across your kahui ako? How might professional learning communities be used to support this? And lastly, how might you spread your effective assessment practices to your whānau and wider school community? The next step in the tool is identifying what forms of evidence will need to be collected to show student progress in line with your goal. You may recall from video 3 our discussion on the range of evidence required to monitor student progress and teacher impact. This included student performance, i.e. student achievement data, student voice, providing evidence of how the students experience and understand the learning, and teacher practice, evidence of what they are doing and saying in the classroom. It is imperative that the capacity of your staff is raised so they can gather and use the evidence you have identified. What systems do you currently have in place to assist teachers to collect evidence in these 3 areas? What support do teachers have to use this evidence to reflect on the impact of their assessment for learning practices and identify changes that need to occur? The last consideration is that ownership of and responsibility for the reform must shift from the originators of it, i.e. the group who put together your Kapulsio plan, to within and throughout the school. The shift in ownership will ensure that teachers and school leaders will have the knowledge and skills to deepen, spread, and sustain the assessment for learning pedagogies and practices, while continuing to monitor student outcomes to meet the agreed goal. A crucial element is for teachers to be agentic and taking responsibility and accountability for their learning and student outcomes. In your school, what needs to be put in place to support teachers to do this? How might you use systems identified in video 3, teacher feedback and coaching, professional collegial discussions, to support this? On the Google site, we have loaded a template for you to use to create a Kapulsio plan for your goals for assessment capability in your school. Have a go at creating your plan and bring it along to your next PRC.